The Ashanti in ancient America. Although there is considerable evidence about African tribes in ancient America, especially the Olmecs, very little is known about other African tribes that Europeans found when they entered the Americas, especially in South America. In Ashanti in ancient America, we will discuss one of the important groups that lived here, the Ashanti. Much of the information that we know about ancient Africans in Mexico are related to the Olmecs. For example, in Atlantis in Mexico, Dr. Clyde Winters provides an exhaustive account of the Olmec people. You can order his book from lulu.com. Constantine Rafinis is an important scholar of the 19th century. Dr. Rafinis wrote extensively on the ancient inhabitants of the Americas. Rafinis published an important research journal during this time called the Atlantic Journal. In the Atlantic Journal, he wrote about many issues relating to the Americas. Dr. Constantine Rafinis was sure that there were many African Indians in the Americas. These Indians had Negro features, physical features, and spoke African languages. Dr. Rafinis was sure that one of the most prominent African Indian groups was, in a sense, the Yoruba people. An important paper written about the ancient Americas was an article written in 1832 called The Primitive Black Nations of America. In this article, Rafinis talked about the Yoruba people. The Yoruba people, he found, spoke a language that was related to the Ashanti or Fante speaking people of West Africa. The Ashanti and Fante people belong to the Akan ethnic group. The Akan ethnic group is made up of a number of people. The Akan are divided into matriarchal clans or Abu Sua, and there's a dozen kingdoms that make up the Akan Empire. The earth female deity is connected to fertility, and this was the main god of the ancient Ashanti or Akan people. We find, in a sense, that the Fante people are usually associated or called the coastal Akan because they live near the coastal areas of West Africa. The Ashanti people, who really are called Asante people, live in the interior. According to oral traditions, the Akan people migrated from the north part of Ghana to occupy southern Ghana. Today you can find the Akan people from Ghana to Ivory Coast on along the coast to Togo. The Asante or Akan people are very important. The Asante people had a very important religion and they were very studious about their belief in their gods and stools. Stools indicated status and power among the succession of chiefs and kings. In fact, one of the leading kings of the Asante, Abru Krampa, in a sense, fought an important battle against the British. And in these wars, the Ashanti tried to keep control of their country until much later in the 20th century. Asante is the British corruption of the name Asante. Fante is just one of the tribes that belong to the Akan. The Ashanti have a matriarchal society, and the king of the Ashanti is usually succeeded by his nephew. Among the Ashanti, the main god is called Onyame. He is the high god. Priests are called Ose. The Yoruba people of South America are people that lived along the Orinoco River in Suriname and Venezuela. Padre Gumila, a Jesuit priest, conducted research among the Indians who lived on the Orinoco River. He provides us with information about the Yoruba Indians. Joseph Gumila wrote descriptions of native life along the Orinoco River. His discussion of local healing practices was critical in showing people that South Americans had their own unique science and civilization. He wrote about the Yoruba, or African tribe that lived along the Orinoco. He found that the people who were included in the Yoruba tribe had very high science. Grumilla's work is very informative about the Yoruba and other South American people. This is written in his book El Orinoco Ilustrado, Historia Natural Civil y Geográfica de este Gran Río. Here is a picture of the American Indians conducting one of their medical procedures and their cultural activities. Here we also find, in a sense, a very important picture, and in this picture we see their use of various plants. And in fact, many Europeans, by studying the people, the Urura, and other South American people learned about many plants that have helped Europeans to maintain their science. Here we can see, in a sense, some of the fishing and cultural areas of the Urura people. According to Daniel Garrison Britton, in 1701, Gramilla said that there were around 3,000 Urura and Biatoya people living in nearby communities on the Orinoco River. The Urura inhabit an area stretching from Guyana to Choco. Rapanese collected Urura vocabulary, in evidence that a nation of American descendants of Ham now inhabit a district of South America. In this article, Rapanese compared the vocabulary items to African languages and found that they were related to Ashanti or the Fante language. Rapanese found that 40% of the Urura language is related to Ashanti. The Urura language was spoken from the Meta to the Casanare and Kakida to the foothills of the mountains of New Granada. The Urura may have established the Velinoid and Aquanoid culture series in period 4. These sites are situated along the middle and lower Orinoco River. As mentioned earlier, the Orinoco River was the main settlement area for blacks in the New World coming directly from Africa. In 1650, many runaway slaves began to join the Urura people. These slaves fled slavery in Dutch Guiana, Suriname. Here they joined the black Indian tribes living along the Orinoco River. Today, instead of calling these black people Urura, they are usually called the the bush blacks or the bush Negroes. The bush blacks are divided into two tribes, the Saramaka and the Akan. The Akan or the Akan, they have many games that they play related to African games such as Warring, Mancala, and Aji. Melville Herskovitz, who was a student of the bush African culture, found in a sense that much of the bush black culture is related to the Ashanti people of West Africa. Among the bush blacks, we find many combs and stools, things that are popular not only among the so-called bush blacks, but also, in a sense, the Ashanti. The name of the bush black god is called Obosimo. This corresponds to the Twi term for god, Obosam. The name of the thunder god among the various bush black people also, in a sense, relate to the Twi word Tata, which means father. So we find that many of the thunder gods are called Tata. The snake god of the bush blacks is called Anamino. This corresponds to the Twi word Onini, for, in a sense, the python god. What we find is that many of the terms that were used by the Urura and the various bush blacks were terms, in a sense, that have a Fante or, in a sense, the language of the Akan Twi etymology. But what we find, in a sense, that often among the bush blacks, words that had an A sound were changed. Words that had an O sound, in a sense, really relate to an A sound in some of the other dialects. The earth god of the bush blacks was called, in a sense, the great ancestor. We find, in a sense, that among the Akan and also, in a sense, among the various Ashanti people, we find, in a sense, that fertility is a very important thing. As a result, we find that many of the idols and statues made by the bush blacks and Ashanti relate to our fertility. We also find among the bush blacks that the word for soul was akra. This is also, in a sense, the Twi word for soul. We find, in a sense, many spider stories common among the Akan and bush blacks. Among the bush blacks, as in Africa, the spider stories relate to Anansi. We find, in a sense, that it's very interesting that these Akan or Urura people